Thank you for joining us for this episode of Comply on the Fly with M3 and Karen B. Comply on the Fly is your trusted weekly resource for reliable insight and quick answers on common employee benefits compliance questions. Please note, this podcast and the contents herein do not constitute legal advice. Seek the advice of counsel for any employee benefits compliance-related guidance or strategy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Karen B., and the Comply on the Fly question of the week is, what are the requirements for offering COBRA for a health flexible spending account, also known as an FSA? Health FSAs are considered group health plans, and therefore you are required to offer COBRA upon the occurrence of a COBRA qualifying event, typically termination. However, the offer of COBRA can be limited for FSAs. And what do I mean by that? If the following conditions apply, COBRA for the FSA only needs to be offered if the amount that the employee would have available for reimbursement at the time of the COBRA qualifying event is greater than the amount of premiums that would be paid or contributions that would be paid into the FSA, or in other words, an underspent account. So what are the conditions? First, the Health FSA is funded only by employee contributions, or the employer matches the employee contributions or only contributes up to $500, whichever is greater. Secondly, all employees eligible to participate in the Health FSA are also eligible to participate in the employer's medical plan at the same time. And three, the Health FSA has no insurance protection. This would be pretty rare, by the way. As stated, if those conditions are met, COBRA only has to be offered to underspent accounts, and it can be limited to the remainder of the FSA plan year rather than for the full 18 months. So what would be an example of an underspent account and an overspent account? An example of an underspent account would be if an employee elects to contribute $1,200 for the year into their Health FSA, and they terminate at the end of September of that year, but they have not spent any of the funds in the FSA. So the total amount of reimbursement available at the time of the COBRA qualifying event is the full $1,200. Assuming the employee has paid the premiums or contributed up to the end of September, the COBRA premium for the remainder of the year would be $100 a month for those remaining months of the year, totaling $300. And if you're adding the 2%, which you can for COBRA, it would be $306. So in this example, the total amount available for your reimbursement, $1,200, is greater than the COBRA premium, $306, meaning the Health FSA is underspent. Because the FSA is underspent, the Health FSA must be offered under COBRA. What would be an example of an overspent account? Well, let's take the same example above, except that by the end of the September, when the termination occurs, the employee has submitted $900 of reimbursable expenses. The total amount of reimbursement available left under that FSA at the time of the COBRA event is $300, the $1,200 minus the $900 that has already been reimbursed. Again, the total of the premiums remaining for the year would be the $100 for each month plus the 2%, which is $306. In this example, the total amount for reimbursement left, $300, is less than the COBRA premium, $306, meaning the Health FSA is overspent. Because the Health FSA is overspent, the Health FSA does not need to be offered under COBRA coverage. If an employer does not want to determine if the Health FSA is overspent versus underspent, you are permitted to offer COBRA coverage for all Health FSAs, both under and overspent. However, this approach would leave an employer at risk for additional losses from an overspent account if an employee elects the COBRA, uses the remaining reimbursement amount, but then drops COBRA before paying the entire remaining Health FSA premiums. As a reminder, employers cannot require an employee to repay any Health FSA reimbursements that exceed the employee's contribution to the Health FSA, as it would be a violation of the Uniform Coverage Rule. You may be tempted to receive voluntary repayments, but this would also be a violation of that rule. COBRA premiums are the only additional FSA contributions that employers can accept. And that is your Comply on the Fly question of the week. Thanks for tuning in.
What's on your mind? If you have a pressing compliance question, send it to askkarenb@m3ins.com. We'll do our best to cover it in an upcoming episode. You can now follow and subscribe to Comply on the Fly on Spotify, iTunes, and Google Podcasts. Make sure to tune in next week and encourage others to join us.